Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where we talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Raising Dion Season 2, Episode 2. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we get an explanation to Pat's situation. So he has been around for the past 2 years, which is interesting. So at some point, like for him, he's like, right, I felt myself floating, and then he came together for whatever reason, and he's like, yeah, it took a whole day for his body to reform, and took him and then he ended up going into the nearest town because he was living a life, trying to put everything behind him. That's why he didn't reveal himself until now, because it's like, right, going back, no matter what's happened to me in that 2-year time frame, it's like I can't make up for all that I've done, so everyone's better off without me. It can't really undo the damage he's done. But he saw what Braden, because he didn't see Braden, he just saw footage of the freak storm that killed the guy at the arcade. Well, we know it was Braden, but he immediately recognized what brought him out of hiding now out of any time is because he saw the video of the crooked man killing a guy. He recognized it immediately, and he came here to want to help. Now, he talks about the fact is he doesn't have his powers anymore, which is so interesting in the long run, that it's like, right, I don't have these powers yet, he was brought back to life, but why is that? Is it because he was the main body? Part of me wonders, is it really that he doesn't have any powers, or are they so dormant in him now? Because it's like, the fact is you were able to reconstitute. And I'm jumping ahead, but I love that's a line from Nicole of why you? Out of anyone we lost, Mark, Charlotte, all the innocent people he killed getting their powers, why him? Why does he get a second chance when no one else does? That is the sad thing, And even I'm not 100%. I didn't walk away from this episode being like, Pat deserves. It's just, I'm still suspicious of Pat because part of me is wondering, did he come back here pretending to help when in actuality he's trying to get his powers back? Now, it's really interesting the way Pat kind of breaks it down, but he makes it sound like he says because he even recognizes those negative qualities in me, they were there long before that monster found its way to me. But he's like that, the jealousy, all that terrible, those negative things, aspects about myself, they left the moment the crooked man did. So the question is basically, I'm wondering when he got reconstituted, is it kind of there's been plenty of examples of this where it's all the bad of someone and all the good of them has been ripped out. So you have all the positive stuff. I made a reference to Misfits in the first episode, and it's kind of like Rudy. I think the crooked man is all the darkness in Pat might be in the form of that. And then there's also this Pat, which is the better side, because he says since then I haven't felt any of that, because I think all the bad in him has been split off. They're basically he's been ripped in half, and all the good parts of him are here as Pat. Maybe once again, I'm waiting for our Shyamalan twist where it's nope, he's been bad the entire time, and he's just trying to get his powers back because he hasn't felt whole, which is interesting because I think the crooked man's kind of feeling that to some extent too, because he was right, Dion shattered me into pieces, and so he's slowly but surely getting his powers back. I think that's so interesting. It's taken him 2 years. To be fair, it was Pat was knocking off powered people for a couple years, so it kind of makes sense that it probably because every person he killed probably made him that much stronger, and now that all those because I think when he split off, every person that was inside of him went their separate ways too, if they kind of moved on or whether their energy transferred somewhere else in the universe. But yeah, because I think it's so interesting because they're starting to get into the ins and outs of the powers too, being your powers are tied to your DNA, so there's no way anyone else could have your powers but you, Pat. So that's why they think he's lying. But that's the thing. The crooked man is something else entirely, because no one else's powers are like that. For it to go from someone else to be its own being, it's yeah. Like I said, it might just be a special property of Pat, because once again, his power was kind of very different. We never really got to see everyone else get hit by the Aurora stuff, because maybe no one else did. They were in the proximity, and maybe being in proximity gave them powers, but maybe Pat's the only one who got direct hits on his body, because his body is kind of messed up and scarred up from where it landed and hit him. So, and it's been slowly corroding his body the entire time, because maybe he's the only one that's had direct contact, maybe. I don't know, there's like a lot of unanswered stuff there, but it does kind of get your mind wondering the ins and outs of how it all works, how it all operates. But I just thought that was fascinating, him still trying to be like, yeah, you need my help for whatever it is coming. So I am going to jump around a little bit, and I since I brought up Nicole, I will bring it up. I find it so fascinating that, once again, stuff is happening faster than I thought it would. Like I said, I knew the Pat thing was happening. I didn't know it was just going to be a first episode thing. That's interesting. I didn't expect them to tell Nicole like this soon, because Dion's talking to his mom about like, oh yeah, like, Suzanne, you guys are friends. She's like, we weren't at first, but we are now. It's like, what if she wasn't telling you something? She's like, well, that wouldn't be a part of the agreement we made. But the interesting thing is, well, because Suzanne discovered some stuff about things being active in the hole, so she's investigating it. His mom already knows about all the holes and like something's going on there. They changed, like, so she knows about that. Plus, Suzanne actually went to her about Pat. Now the question is, did she do that because, like, right, you're going to find out and I want you to be the first one to know? Or is it because you knew bringing Nicole there would kind of trigger something in Pat? Could be both, because it's like, right, she has a right to know. Plus, we could potentially get something out of him by having you show up. But I was quite surprised. And no matter what Pat said, he's like, I'm sorry for everything I did. But for her, it's like, no. You don't get to think about Dion. You get to talk about Dion. You won't get to miss Dion after everything you put me through. Because that jealousy, the jealousy that's inside of you that was already there, it's still there. It doesn't just go away. So it's like, right, because that's not some part of that monster. That was all you. Monster the Crooked Man may have amplified it. But, and it's also feeding off some points I'd brought up last episode too about that. Like, how much of what Pat did was him? How much was the Crooked Man? How much was the Crooked Man, like, exasperating what was already kind of his negative qualities and just heightening them. And so we kind of get a little bit of an answer for that in this episode in that regard. But it's like, yeah, what you did, it doesn't get erased, you can go off trying to live a happy life and stuff like that. Because even he was like, I didn't come here for you. He was like, I'd hope that you don't, and she's like, and he's like, oh, I understand. She's like, no, you don't understand anything, because that jealousy and everything, Pat, is what led to you killing Mark. The person that was supposed to be like your brother, who was your best friend. You guys have known each other. Yeah, but that jealousy's been growing in you for years. Like, something was broken in Pat long before he got his powers, so. And even him saying the line of, well, I will get out of here. And those moments, that's where moments like that, where he's like, I will get out of here, where I'm like, see what I mean? There's still some, in that moment, you should have just shut up. You shouldn't have said anything, but, him being like, well, I will eventually get out of here. I guess it's just him trying to be realistic, but I'm like, you shouldn't have said anything, because you're just going to set her off more. Like, I don't know why you thought she'd be like, okay with you talking about you getting out of here. She's like, no, you're going to be locked up forever. Because he's like, I want to help. He wants to make up for, once again, does he really want to make up for what he did? Does he have ulterior motives? Who knows? So, which is so sad, because obviously running into Pat put Nicole in a bad mood, especially because her and Tevin, they were having their vibe and their flow. I love that the moment Tevin saw the mind mover outfit, he's like, yeah, but it's like this, and maybe we need to make it more like that. He's like, whoa, you guys aren't sneakerheads? He's like, okay, seriously? I'm not a sneakerhead, so all the references didn't kind of went over my head, but I'm like, I heard Kyrie, I'm like, oh, like, I guess maybe Kyrie, like, has like a set of shoes of his own or something like that. Once again, I'm not the biggest sneaker person. I've worn the same shoes forever and ever, because I don't care about shoes like that. It's weird. I'm persnippety about it, but I'm also like, in other cases, I'm not. It's a weird thing I have about shoes. But regardless, I just thought that was kind of a neat moment. I'm assuming Tevin's going to be responsible for giving Mind Mover an upgrade. I wonder if he's going to help him get a new name too, because it's like, yeah, I mean, it helps, but it's also like it is too much of a literal name, Mind Mover. Especially when you consider the fact is he can do so much more too. Because I like that he talked to Tevin about that. Of like, yeah, like my abilities, like when he's like, yeah, when my mom was sad, I made a whole bunch of lights, and he was like, oh, you want to do it again? He's like, nah, I don't want to, because it's too babyish. And he was like, trying to help your mom, there's nothing more grown up than that, I mean, the sad thing is he is kind of acting a little too grown now, because he is in a situation where he's trying to protect his mom, which is kind of an issue. Because for her, it's like, okay, like, he's like, don't worry, mom, I'll protect you. She's like, How messed up is that, Cat? He's asking to protect me. I'm the mother in this situation. Of course, that's going to like bother her and rub her the wrong way. Obviously, because it's like, I'm supposed to be the parent in this situation. He's supposed to be the child. No one accounts for the fact is when your child miraculously ends up displaying superpowers. It's like, there's no easy solution around that. So no one can blame you for that. But because Dion talked to her about, like he still has nightmares about the Crooked Man. He's like, I used to have nightmares about Thanos and Voldemort. I was like, oh, that's interesting. It's not so fascinating. I was like, will Thanos ever be someone else's boogeyman? I wonder about that. Like kids growing up who like grew up watching the MCU stuff. I mean, I'm assuming more so because of the movies and not because I think that put Thanos in the general zeitgeist of pop culture for a lot of people. Unless you are a comic book nerd or a video game nerd, because obviously like Marvel vs. Capcom and stuff like that. But like other than that, like most people would probably know Thanos mainly because of the movie. That's my main experience with them, right? So I'm curious, like, are there going to be kids who grow up and be like, oh, Thanos is their legit boogeyman? That's so interesting to know. Voldemort, I can understand, because, even as an adult, I'm like, Voldemort is creepy as hell, that character design and stuff like that. Yeah, character's meant to be creepy, but, like, it's crazy to think about. I mean, Thanos did wipe out half the universe. It's like, that's enough to give anyone nightmares, especially as a kid. Oh my god, who's, like, super into superheroes and stuff like that. He is the scariest boogeyman, being able to do that. But I was just interesting timing, too, because I was, like, watching something, like, I caught some, like, memes about like Avengers Endgame recently that I was just watching like a little bit before I watched this episode. So it's interesting timing throwing Thanos out there. I guess there's no wrong time for Thanos, I suppose. But regardless. But yeah, he talked about having nightmares about the Crooked Man, and he's just like, why haven't you said anything? Because it's like, for him, it's like he wants to be strong and probably admitting that he's afraid of something. Well, it's also because he knows how much it triggers his mom, like how afraid she was. I'm scared. It's like, for her, it's like she's trying to put on a brave face, but even like Dion knows, like, right, you're scared. I think even he was to some extent, especially because when you add in the fact is that the Crooked Man was none other than Pat, that adds an extra layer to the whole complicated feelings about it. So I thought it was interesting that Kat was like, oh, you should tell Dion. And she's like, no, Pat's going to stay locked up and he ain't going to worry about it. It's like, he is going to find out. And when he finds out that you knew and that you lied to him about it, that's going to be an issue. Because there's already an issue where Dion is kind of stepping up to be like, no, like, when do I get to make decisions too? I'm the one with the powers and stuff like that. And she's like, yeah, but don't get it twisted. I'm your mom. I get to make those decisions too. Like, you're still a little kid, getting a little too big for his britches, which kind of goes into what Suzanne was talking about before. An 8-year-old would listen to his mom, even there was issues there as well, but still a 10-year-old is going to need someone else. Is more likely to listen to their friends, so I think that element is definitely going to play into a darker element for Dion as the story progresses. But yeah, I'm wondering what Kat's role is going to be in this, because obviously she's coming at things from her perspective of no longer being a doctor. She even says, like, it made her even question, like, why did I become a doctor in the first place? It's like, mom and dad wanted me to be one, but other than that, like, it's like, yeah, and Nicole being like, yeah, you were the good child, because I guess Nicole was kind of like the free-spirited one who kind of did her own thing, and now the roles have kind of been a little bit of reverse. And so Kat's got her perspective on things, and I'm curious to see what that new change means for her, what it means for her interactions with Nicole. Because I think, once again, you can already see a little bit bumping of heads and stuff like that, because they already have very different perspectives about this whole Pat thing. Kat saying, like, you should tell Dion he's a smart kid, he'll be able to handle it. It's like, right. He's keeping secrets from you because you're also keeping secrets from him. Granted, he doesn't know that you're keeping secrets from him. He just thinks Suzanne's keeping secrets from both of you, when in actuality, they're both keeping secrets from you. So that's going to make Dion feel like the only people he can trust is going to be his friends, because, like, right, they won't lie to me. They'll tell me the truth. Whereas you, Mom, you're lying to me. You didn't tell me that Pat was bad. Why? And she's going to be like, right, I'm trying to protect you. But, it's also like, right, she'll probably hit him with the, I'm the parent, I'm the adult, I don't have to explain myself to you type of thing, which that could probably be even more of an issue, but still. We get a little bit of an update with Gary's circumstances. I was almost wondering whether or not he was going to leave his phone down there and they were going to find it. It's like, no, they didn't. The guy running, like the main scientist dude running the dig site, the site, he does find the footprints. He's like, oh, it must be Gary's, and tries to call him up. And we see Gary kind of on his chair like that, where he got struck in the neck is like pulsating. And it's just like very Groot-esque situation going on a little bit with his neck. So that's wild. What that looks like, who knows? Because we got one person. So I don't know if it's going to spread from Gary, or like I said, is it just going to be that one spot infecting everyone in that general area of Atlanta, or will the other holes start sprouting stuff too, and then eventually he'll amass an army all across the world who all will find their way to Atlanta. I'm curious, are they going to be superpowered people in the sense of like, oh, they're all going to have superhuman strength, or is it going to be more like a zombie invasion, like alien body snatcher type of thing? Like, I'm curious how that's all going to manifest itself with whatever Gary's circumstances are. And like I said, will he sprout and be able to infect others? Like, is he patient zero and then he just spreads it to others? And like I said, you have almost like a zombie apocalypse thing going on. We'll have to wait and see. I like that they were initially planning to examine the hole, which Dion eventually goes down there, but he sees the flowers. But whatever it is, like either it's just their creepiness or whatever it is, like something in him told him to get away from them, because they immediately start getting attracted to him. So I'm curious, is it because it's just Dion in general and they're designed to come after him, and it's just kind of in their programming of like whatever it is that the Crooked Man started down there? Or maybe they just in general get attracted to whatever that is specifically attracts the people with powers. That's just something else floating in my head. But it was interesting. Poor Jonathan getting pushed by Braden's power, which is also got us sad on that kid's part, because he can hear every thought every other person says about him. Like, oh, he's weird. Oh, he smells this and that. They brought up last episode, like, oh, his shoes and stuff. So it's like, man, being able to hear the last thing you want is be able to hear a kid's thoughts, especially, at that age where but he's also, he's more focused, just legitimately staring Dion down. Dion's just kind of giving a heads up, like, yo, what's up? Like, kind of giving a nod, and just like Braden just dead on staring at him. Like, that's not creepy. But yeah, like Esperanza, Jonathan, and Dion try to befriend him and stuff, and he's just like, oh yeah, pushes Jonathan so that Jonathan goes like, yeah, you're right, Dion, you should show him around. And I love that even when he had the opportunity, the Crooked Man couldn't do anything. And the question is, why? Are you like, because whatever it was in that moment, like Dion kind of felt it, like I guess on the back of his neck, and he was like, what was that? And Braden's like, oh, I don't know. Like, why couldn't it get to him? Is it because Dion's grown so strong in these past 2 years that in his weakened state he's still not strong enough to even get close to him? Like, maybe because of maybe certain aspects of Dion's powers kind of immunized him to the maybe there's like some like super powered trauma PTSD that the Crooked Man has, so that when he tries to reach for Dion, his body kind of short circuits a little and kind of freaks out because of their last encounter. It did something to his system that he hasn't fully recovered from. So getting within close proximity like that to Dion just won't work, because the way his power, like the powers work in general, like obviously the manipulation of molecules. So maybe the molecules around him, like I said, it created like almost like an antivirus around him, so that the Crooked Man has a harder time getting towards him. Once again, like, I'm going deep diving into something that will hopefully get explained, or maybe they'll just kind of brush over it. I'm just curious about the intrinsic details about like how a lot of that works, and like my brain wants to try and figure out like, oh, like what's their in-universe explanation for like what that was, because even Braden was like, oh, I thought you said you were strong enough. He's like, I'm not, but I will be the longer I'm around you. Which, that's so sad to see, like, basically those people being held hostage like that. Because I brought it up last episode, too. I don't know whether he has to he must have to constantly re-up that, but maybe the more of his power he expands upon someone, the longer it lasts. So like if he's just using it for a little bit, like the lady at the arcade, it only lasts for a couple seconds. But pushing his will upon these two strangers to be his parents, maybe it's a constant thing. So it's like, cool, the more I just push my power, I could get them like basically like that for a couple hours, and I need to come back and re-up it every couple hours, or the hold, the compulsion will break. Either way, they're just sitting there in the dark, just almost like robots, just twisting and turning, just keeping an eye out. It's like, yeah, they serve their purposes. Of like, does he let them eat? Do they get to sleep? Well, I don't know. We see him eating pizza, but I don't know if they're eating anything, because he's probably depriving them of stuff they need to survive. So eventually they probably will break and die because of it. They'll probably be so exhausted. Maybe that would add a super dark element to. I mean, it's already dark enough, him controlling them like that and putting them in sentinel mode, essentially, like, oh, keep an eye out on everything and just sit there like a robot until I need you again. Super jacked up, but especially if you go even deeper on that, that could get really dark depending on how far they decide to take that. And the sad thing is, Brayden's like, cool, so once you gotten Dion and defeated him, yeah, you'll be strong enough and I won't be alone again, right? And he's like, yes. Because once again, being around his aunt, she wasn't the most receptive. Once again, how she felt about her brother, I'm sure a lot of that translated over to Brayden for her, so it just made him feel even more alone. Once again, I just think it's interesting that you're rolling with the thing that killed your dad, but maybe it's just he's just so brokenhearted and alone that he takes help from whoever he can. But also maybe because even Suzanne pointed it out, the Crooked Man's form is different now, so maybe he doesn't recognize it as the same thing that came after his dad 2 years ago. Because Suzanne does eventually find the video that Pat was talking about. And so it's like back to that conversation of like, right, but you said Pat was a Crooked Man. It's like, yeah, but something else is definitely going on here. So, and that now immediately you go like, okay, I can see David definitely taking advantage of this, because it's like, cool, if Pat's powers could transfer to someone else, so making the Crooked Man the perfect test subject to really dive into this, that's going to be interesting. But it's like, yeah, that's probably like not the test subject you want to test that with. But it's like, right, the Crooked Man could be ground zero for potentially harnessing powers and kind of making it so that other people can get them as well. There's also Simone and Janelle, the girl, like, we still don't know what her power is. Her mom describes it as, oh, she can blow stuff up. And obviously, you know, being that intermediary that she is, Nicole is trying to reach out to Simone. And it's like, yeah, her mom is like, Simone's like, you know, dealing with it the best she can. The people at Biona, like, claim to help, but she's like, it's only going so far. But she's like, I get it. Like, look, I have to have the scar from my kid made toy NATO. And she's like, a 7-year-old? How'd you deal with a 7-year-old power? She's like, who says I actually did? But she's like, right, but the people here, it's a lot, it's crazy, but they are going to help. And if you need anything at any point in time, reach out to me. So it is neat that Nicole is kind of finding her place, kind of almost like, I think, a Professor X of sorts. It's kind of like the role she's playing a little bit. Going to be a mentor to the super squad, maybe, that eventually comes about when the going gets tough, and Dion's going to need some super powered friends and help to face what's coming. I thought it was the cutest thing too. Let me circle back when Nicole came to pick up Dion, but he was investigating the hole, and him and Jonathan were investigating that hole. So like Esperanza had to run interference, and I love her being like, "So what's been up with you, girl?" Like I was like, "That's the most adorable thing ever." She's like, "Oh, you look so pretty." Like, yeah, it's like, "Oh, I'm singing this song. It's from this dude who died in like the 1800s. He sung it instead of like," and she went high and then she went low, and she's like, "But I could do it better." I'm like, that little girl is super adorbs. I love it, dude. That was such a cute interaction between the two of them. It's so good. But the Crooked Man convinced Brayden. It's like, right, if you want to take Dion down, take him down from the inside. So Brayden reveals his powers to Dion. Once again, showing you how scary that telepathy. Because I always want to, when I start with and I think about superpowers, I always want to jump to telekinesis. But when it comes to his telepathy, he's able to kind of push you, and obviously he can make you see whatever you. Well, at the very least, he can project himself into your mind. Now, whether it's going to be a thing of he can full-blown create illusions by making your mind see stuff that isn't necessarily there, this seems like that could lead to that, but maybe they won't push the power that far. Because everyone's got their abilities, but they've got stages to their powers. Because I'm curious, like, for example, Tevin's, like, shield, like, how far can that go? Like, what will that look like when he pushes that even further? Because most people only have one ability. Dion's the only one that really has, like, more than one. Charlotte I guess that still counted as part of her invisibility, is the fact is that she could spark electricity and, like, zap you, so... But like I said, I think he's going to end up, manipulating and using his powers to push people, especially because he's probably going to end up pushing everyone that's normal away from him. So that, push Jonathan away, push Esperanza away. I say Esperanza away. So there's the only one you can count on is me, Dion. I'm your best friend through and through. We're in this together, super powered friends. It might be something of that nature, so... It's definitely going to be interesting to ultimately see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.